Hi everyone and welcome to the Woody Cove. In today's video I want to talk about something that's really interesting in astrology. About 3 years ago in my own personal life I have been running my successful business for over 15 years, doing the work I loved, but suddenly I started to feel different. And it came as a surprise, it came as something very uncomfortable, but it was undeniably there. And obviously I've been doing astrology for over 10 years, so I knew about particular transits and aspects that were happening to my chart. But you can't quite ever put into words the experience that you get when planets are aspecting or transiting your chart. And today's topic is going to be about the outer planets. Because the outer planets, from a psychological level, have the greatest impact over time. We have the more kind of faster moving planets, which is the Sun, the Moon, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter. And then we start to go into Saturn, and Saturn moves through each sign for about 2.5 years. And I mentioned in my previous video about Neptune and Uranus and Pluto. Uranus is usually about 7 years through a sign. Pluto can be between sort of 12 to 14 years, even longer than that sometimes. And Neptune's around 14 years. So these planets are having quite an impact on us, but in a much more subtle, kind of slower moving way. But I make this video from my own experience of going through this. And there's so much more to add, but I'm going to keep it specific to Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Chiron, and the eclipses. But keeping it succinct, because it's so important to know that we can't always put our finger on what's going on for us. But when we know what's happening in our chart, we can understand it, although that doesn't always necessarily make it any easier. So for me, it was about 3 years ago that I had the Uranus opposite Uranus transit. Life-changing. There was a deep need to break free from certain structures that I had in place, from ways of working, from the topics that I was working in, to needing to let go of some training opportunities. It was like everything just suddenly didn't give me that same spark, and this really kind of crept up on me. I wasn't quite, I wasn't sure where it was coming from. It was quite kind of left field. But I was going through the Uranus opposite Uranus transit, and this is a transit that we all go through in our 40s. So it's typically between the age of about 40 to 42. Mine hit slightly later at about the age of 44. Well, between kind of 43 to 44. I'm pretty sure that if you're watching this, you can cast your mind back to the time in your early 40s, and there will have been something that significantly changed in your life. And the same with being around the age of 28, 29, when we get our first Saturn return. And suddenly we grow up. It's like Saturn's there asking us to kind of step up and step into our duties and become more of an adult. Maybe we let go of some things, or we got married, or decided we needed to step into a proper career. It's those kind of things, but I'm going to go through it. Because this is really important, and these planets are creating deep psychological changes within us as they're transiting through our chart, but particularly when they're making stressful aspects. So I know that might sound very technical, so I do want to try and keep this really simple. So we all go through these, but essentially the Saturn return is the most significant that we tend to experience collectively at the age of about 29 to 30. Can be from about 28 to 30. And then again around the age of about 58 to 60. And this is a time where life can just feel a little bit more challenging. It can feel a little bit more limiting. It can feel like we can feel a bit restricted in some way, or that we have to take a more adult approach to things. It can cause a bit of tension. It can cause us to feel like there's hard work to do, basically. And again, this can be so many different it can manifest itself in so many different ways, but it's the energy of taking things seriously, stepping into a more adult approach or a more mature approach about things, an awakening. That's also can happen with Saturn, when we're having strong Saturn transits. Endings, commitments coming and going, but it's about a complete restructuring of our life and letting go of what is no longer aligned with us. So that's the Saturn return, but there are also stressful aspects that Saturn can bring us, which can aspect our personal planets. But Saturn is the restructurer. They all restructure in their own way, actually. But Saturn is really about maturity and responsibility and stepping into commitments, taking things more seriously. So that's Saturn. So now let's move to Pluto. So Pluto is the planet of evolutionary change. It's the death and rebirth planet. It is the restructuring. It's quite significant changes where we can completely transform how we look. We can completely transform our identity. We can end up leaving long marriages, or we can end up starting, getting married as well, because that is, very transforming. But Pluto is usually associated with our sort of deeper healing. So it is very evolutionary in that way, and it's the lord of the underworld. So it's very much about the subconscious and about the deep inner psychological changes that we need to make in order to make our life better. But sometimes Pluto can kind of catch us off guard and sort of pull the rug from under our feet. And we're asked to really take a look at ourselves and look at our shadows, look at what is no longer serving us. Sometimes this can bring people into our life who literally reflect that back to us. We realise that perhaps there's some toxicity in our life, or a person plays out a particular role to make us look at ourselves in a different way, and that cannot be painful. It can be very transforming, it can be very cathartic. It all depends on where we are in terms of our kind of soul journey. Pluto is usually also associated with when something is just completely taken away. So this can also be death. This can be saying that that we all are going to be expecting death when Pluto transits. I have to be careful what I say, but it's that death and rebirth kind of archetypal energy. So it can literally take something away completely. It can completely, things like repossessions of a home, or finding out that your partner has been living a completely different life, or it can be having to psychologically really do some work on ourselves to help us move into the next step of our life, into the next part of our life that is going to serve us so much better. So it takes away and destroys what is no longer serving us in a positive way. And there's usually healing, deep sort of healing that needs to happen with that. I'm not necessarily saying it's always negative experiences, but this very transformational. And that can also be, selling up and deciding to go and live in another country, or completely an old career dying and a new career completely rebirthing. Our beliefs and our values as well. Uranus is a planet of surprises, shocks, unexpected, reforming, catching us off guard, freedom, a desire for freedom, a desire for space and expansion. It can be a deeply creative planet as well, where I know that, for instance, a few years ago for me, when I was going through my Uranus opposition, I just downloaded so much creative content, and I was just writing and writing and writing, constantly writing. I wrote 3 different courses, I wrote a book, got that published on Amazon. It was like this energy coming through me that I was just like, this needs an outlet. So Uranus can really bring that kind of those downloads, inspirations and innovations. And Uranus is often associated with like scientific breakthroughs and epiphanies, ideas that just fall out of the sky, and you just think, oh my gosh, that's such a good idea, or like massive awakenings about something. We can suddenly see life very differently, or completely change our beliefs and values, our entire identity, because we decide, maybe there was once a religion that we believed in, and now we've decided actually no, we don't believe in that anymore, and it's completely something different, or we find something else that fits our beliefs and our values in a different way, which can be completely transformative. So the Uranus opposition, again, it happens kind of like in the early 40s, and is also associated with like the midlife crisis. So I like to call it the midlife metamorphosis. Every time we go through these psychological experiences, it's always to take us on to something better, even though it can be uncomfortable. And when I was going through it in my life, everything was pretty tickety-boo, to be honest. There was nothing I really needed to change. I was burnt out. I was very, very exhausted. I was doing a lot of intense one-to-one work. And it has made me look at how to restructure my business differently and do my work differently. Hence, here I am. And actually stepping into doing more of what you love. Uranus is there to remind you, are you really doing what you enjoy? Does it give you a sense of freedom and expansion? Is it feeling like do you feel like you're evolving, or do you feel like you're staying stuck and small? So Uranus comes along to shake things up. Now, it isn't just in our early 40s. We have Uranus aspects and transits happening depending on our chart. So it really does depend on your chart. But those are the kind of energies that we can expect with Uranus. Neptune. Yeah, so currently experiencing that for myself as well. It's like I've had all of these basically that I'm talking about, and there's so much more to say, but this is about sticking to the topic. But Neptune blurs things. Neptune can make us feel confused. It can make us see things in a slightly different way that maybe we're not really quite seeing properly. It can make us feel like we just don't have any kind of focus, or we can lose a sense of identity. It's kind of like Neptune tends to sort of melt things away and put rose-coloured tinted glasses in front of us. It can also be a planet of deception and deceit, but sometimes we can be deceiving ourselves, and we need a bit of a reminder about, actually, am I really being honest with myself about some of my behaviours and habits? And maybe I need to look at this differently. Neptune is a very spiritual energy, a very spiritual planet. So Neptune is very much associated with the sign of Pisces because it rules Pisces. It's very spiritual. It's very much about tuning into the esoteric and the unseen and the dream state. Hearing information coming from other dimensions. Intuition, really strong intuition if you've got a strong Neptune in your chart. But these transits, they can make us feel very confused, and really reevaluate who we are, what we value. But the thing with Neptune is it's a very sort of slow experience. I've had Neptune on my planets, on my ascendant for the last couple of years, and have been constantly changing my mind about what I want to be really clear about and what I want to focus on. And it's been but very deeply creative and very deeply spiritual experience, to the point that I'm stepping more into my spiritual beliefs now with the work that I do. So there is a silver lining at the end, but you can feel very lost, you can feel very unclear. It can be a time where we find out things we don't want to know, or it makes us really look at ourselves in the mirror and see things that we perhaps haven't seen before. But it can also really connect us to the deep, strong connection with our soul. It can really connect us to our soul's work, to stepping into our joy and finding our path to the God, the God within us. So that's beautiful. It's a beautiful energy. And then we have Chiron transits, and that's very much about healing and wounds and having to do the deeper work. Chiron is more of an asteroid. It can offer a profound healing experience. It can bring situations into our life that we need to look at in order to heal. It can mean that we go to look at our inner child. Maybe we need to go back to our inner child and heal some of our inner child wounds and really reconnect to that version of ourselves and heal it. And also, it's about soul's deeper purpose. It's like, why are you here? What is it that you're here to do? And are you following that? Are you following your joy? Eclipses are super powerful. I had those 18 months ago. I had everything going on in the last couple of years. This is why I'm passionate about talking about this, because it's like these energies, they just kind of come over. And although I am obviously free will. We have free will, of course we have free will, but there's no denying that things are going on in the background, feelings, sensations, desires to break free, a need for change. You know, these feelings come up and they mustn't be ignored. If we choose to ignore these feelings and emotions, then life just can get harder, life can get more miserable. We can end up being in a state of resistance and not attracting the things that we want to attract. We can end up staying in unhappy relationships or in a career that doesn't bring us joy, and then that just feels like hard work. So I think through the process of all of these transits and these astrological, psychological changes, is that it's so important to listen to our intuition and follow up, listen and trust that we are being taken to something greater and something better. Because as I've said in my previous videos, we can get very stuck in our old ways, very connected to an old identity, and it's not always easy. Some people step into it and it's a bit more of a breeze. Many of us, it takes time, and I can speak from someone who's, as I had a business that I knew worked, to then as a solo business owner to start changing and shifting what I'm doing has been very unsettling. It's been scary because I need to know that where I'm going towards, which is my joy, is going to support me, and it's going to pay the bills, and it's going to bring me, you know, abundance. But I know that when I follow my joy, those things will come, and they are coming. And you know, as I've said, coming out of these very strong energies, you kind of come out on the other side and you're like, whoa. And I did a lot wrong, you know, and I look back and I think, wow, I wasted a lot of money on that, and I did that wish I'd done that differently, because I was constantly wanting to follow an old path, and that old path was no longer for my highest good. So eclipses are also very, very potent and very powerful, and the nodes, which are currently in Pisces and Virgo, will be affecting those, obviously, who are Pisces and Virgo, and also the other mutable signs, Sagittarius and Gemini. And it can feel unsettling. Eclipses tend to quantum leap us onto new pathways. Again, similar energies to the outer planets, but they tend to kind of shift our paths. But I feel like with eclipses, it's usually quite a nice feeling, actually, to be honest. Haven't been through that myself for the last couple of years. But that's not, you know, I'm not speaking for everyone there, but it can feel kind of quite fresh and quite exciting and quite new and quite intriguing, and there's maybe, you know, a feeling of what's next. But if you're a kind of person, if you're quite a fixed person and you like to have structure and old, you know, ways that suit you, then that will be very difficult for you. It's that kind of unknowing, that uncertainty that we have to become much more comfortable with, particularly over this next 5 to 10 years, because it is all happening astrologically. We're all being asked to change, we're all being asked to transform. No one is escaping from this. And I'm seeing this a lot in, you know, a lot of the work that I do with corporates, in lots of restructuring, redundancies. It's happening. As I always say to people who are being made redundant and going through that process, as uncomfortable as it sounds, there's always something better on the other side. Because also, if you hold on to a job and you're not happy in it, an eclipse will come along and literally boot you out of it, and that can come as a redundancy. So astrology will always guarantee that we will have turning points and shift timelines, whether we like it or not. So I hope this has been helpful and giving you a little more insight into the powerful outer planets and the eclipses, and I hope that perhaps it's given you a bit of reassurance as well, if you're going through this, that you will ride the wave and you will get through it. And even though change can be painful and uncomfortable, or maybe you're holding on to an old life or an old way and you know that you need to change something, the sooner that you do it, the happier you're going to be. So hope this has been helpful. Take care.